moderate the session now.
Where do we start? Do we have any questions? Darshanji, first of all, thank you very much. This was extremely insightful. I think some of us that have been more closely involved with in the last couple of months and years, we knew we had scratched the surface, but this was extremely insightful. Thank you very much. If there's a question.
Thank you very much. Your inputs were very eye-opening for us. My name is Amita Potnis. I am from the town of Wayland. I worked with the school system since 2017 to educate them on Swastik. In 2023, we got a decision in our favor that since 2023, going forward, the school will call Swastik as an auspicious symbol for the Hindus, Buddhists, and Jains. And the Nazi symbol, Hakenkreuz, will be called Nazi symbol. Lo and behold, no, this is not, well, yes, at that time, awesome.
Deserves applause.
Yes. You know, any Bollywood movie has a masala, so here's the masala. The Jewish community was in a big uproar, and the school came back to us saying that, oh, we really need to make a change. We just need to call Nazi symbol as Nazi swastik, and then swastik for Hindu. And the whole community was in an uproar, like, you know, this is not possible. So we had petitions, we had emails, we had children writing emails, so on and so forth. And the school then said several emails later, we'll take some time to think. Then we told them there's no thinking, this is it, Hakenkreuz and Swastik, make the difference. More recently, just about 10 days ago, there was an incident where the Nazi Hakenkreuz was drawn in town, and the school, the superintendent, and the entire administration, in a very sly manner, issued emails and announcements calling Nazi Hakenkreuz as the swastik. And so we are again in uproar that this is a very sly way of reversing the decision, that we are not even included as, as a party in town that has a voice. And there are plenty of emails that I can perhaps share with those of you who are interested, so that if you're battling this in your town. But at this point in time, we know that there is a rabbi who has a English heritage and who is also a Jew, right? So he's oppressor and oppressed, who is insisting that he continues to oppress us by calling our swastik as the Nazi Hakenkreuz. So my question to you is, and school has buckled. School has buckled under pressure. Our Human Rights, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion program has refused to call it swastik. They are the only people in town who are standing by us. But now the question is, the school is going to teach our children the incorrect history. So with all of this work, and you know us, we fall apart, right, as a community. So what do we do? What options now do we have? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. You've gone through the levels that need to go through already, and you've come to this point. This looks like a question that could go up to OCR. We just talked about not doing that immediately, but assuming that, and you've described the steps you've taken, this might be one you might take it to the Office of Civil Rights.
So thank you for that. I was thinking that that's probably the step. I also want to clarify with this group and audience here that my child, my younger child who's now in 11th grade, was 2 years ago a documented victim of racial discrimination in town. And now she stands to be a victim of religious discrimination as a part of human rights DEI program that's in school. She was nominated to be a part of this committee because she was racially discriminated, and now she's being discriminated just by way of being a Hindu. So this is like all oxymoron stuff going on in school. And the leadership is entirely white. Our superintendent is Jewish. And they are superintendent acting assistant superintendent. A town in which we had our first black superintendent 2 years ago, and he was named nigger in our town in one of those balls. So we have a lot of work to do in our town. So just keeping that in mind, do you think the OCS is still sort of a way to go?
I think so. I think this case seems like it could. What they will do is first they will contact them and ask them to rectify it before they get involved. So once you go to an OCR, they will write to them saying, work with them, resolve it, and they have to produce proof of that, which will include a statement from you saying it's resolved. And short of that, they will come and investigate. The Office of Civil Rights comes to the school physically and investigates. So I think this might be a case for that.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Can you walk us through some other cases? This Wayland story, obviously.
Could you,
Sorry.
could you get up and introduce
Hello,
yourself?
namaskar. My name is Archan Basu. I'm here in Lexington. So the Wayland story was incredible. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure in your position, Darshanji, you must have seen other case studies, maybe in other states, parts of the country. We hear about Texas, Virginia, California. Perhaps you could walk through 2 or 3 case studies if you're familiar and tell us the lessons learned. I mean, you gave us the sort of the distillation of that up front, but I think there probably are some lessons from individual cases as well.
There are many cases. California has had so many of them. A lot of these, we don't really know all the facts. We know what's reported, and sometimes that gets very distorted. So I'll tell you my personal experience working on a textbook project. It was a textbook, this was many years ago, and it was published by Pearson. I think it was Pearson. And there were things in there that we wanted to clarify with facts and change. The process took 5 years. So this is the process when you talk about textbooks, and even though it's on its face it's wrong, but it's still the process of revising something in a textbook. It took us 5 years to do that, and a lot of times what we have to do is present evidence, and what's considered evidence in scholarly terms is very different from what we may consider evidence otherwise. We may say, here's the Bhagavad Gita, translated Bhagavad Gita. That's evidence, and that won't be considered evidence by Pearson or McDougall. Publishers won't do that. So then you have to provide scholars in this area who have written things, and it took us many years traveling around the country. I went to 3 or 4 different states, met with colleges, professors, and got all this. And then we still run into problem because a lot of the scholarly writings that are available, now this is my personal experience from Pearson. This is exactly what they've told me, so it's firsthand. They're saying, yes, it's a great article, but we can't publish it because they have standard style book of publishing. So in the style book, they say certain rules for style, meaning commas and semicolons. And Associated Press has its own style book. New York Times has its own. So like that, publishers have their own style book. And so all of these articles filled with facts and evidence, they won't consider because they can't publish it because it doesn't match up with the style that they have. They won't come out and tell you. The scholar can easily rewrite it or hire someone to write it. But they don't tell you these things. And so as a Hindu community, as scholars representing Hindu culture or whatever we want to put in front of the textbook publishers, it needs to be written in American English. And a lot of these articles, books even, they're not written in American English. They're written well, but the style of writing is British/Indian kind of English. Good English, no question about it, but it's just not the American English. So a few times we tried to have those articles translated by American editors who were born and raised, went to journalism, English, all of that. But because they don't have the concept of certain things, the translations were so dry. And it read scientific, but that emotion was missing in there. Something in there that captures the reader was missing. So one of the problems of Hindu scholars is that a lot of the writing doesn't exist in American English. And once we start producing that, the publishers will start accepting that. And that was a big obstacle that we had to overcome.
Thank you very much. What I hear you say is we have to be prepared. Our communities have to be prepared to play the long game, and we have to meet the standards of scholarship, etc. I'm curious, what are some lessons from academia? So you mentioned the importance of scholars and being able to engage. I'm sure, again, you have stories of both allyship and antagonism that you have experienced coming from higher education. And perhaps you could touch on that a little more.
Honestly, I'd rather not go into that, only because I don't know firsthand. And what happens is repeating things that you've heard that may already be distorted just distorts things more. And so because I don't have firsthand knowledge, it doesn't serve any purpose in that. So with apologies, I will not do that.
My name is Shashank Nene. I will apologize that I'm not actually perhaps as close to this problem as you are, because you are parents with children in high school. My children went through the Lexington high school system and they're already graduated, they're working. So we've gone through this. But when I started hearing about what you're doing and etc., first thing I did is I sat with my kids and I talked to them and I said that, were you ever taught anything, absolutely anything that is remotely even derogatory, incorrect information? Because we have a very strong dialogue within our family where we discuss all of these things which are going on. And my youngest son, he graduated 2009 from high school. So until 2009, my older son graduated a few years before that, but until 2009, there was not one single incident that was reported by the kids, because anything that happened like this, he would immediately come home, and I happened to be one of those radical parents who would go straight in and I would talk about it to the principal and saying, what the hell's going on, okay? I never had a single occasion to do this, and I asked them specifically, do you recall anything? And they said no. So whatever is happening post 2009. One of the things we should find out, and typically in your corporate life you will know, go to the root cause. When did this happen? How did this happen? And who made this happen? Why? And we can go there. And the thing is, there is all sorts of scholarly writings which publishers will accept or not accept. All that is fine. But I am hoping that we live in a tolerant and inclusive society in Lexington. And if that is true, and the experience that we have had in the schooling system has been inclusive. So they have been receptive to ideas, and if you show them you're doing something wrong, they have, responded positively. So I'm wondering where this thing is coming from. If you talk to parents if you talk to teachers, seriously over these issues, why are they not accepting things? I saw articles about certain communities, certain religions being so great, so tolerant, and we talk about, Hindu families women are confined to the house. I can think that is true of other religions rather than Hindu families, right? I am shocked. That's why I'm here. I'm sorry I was late coming in because we had a family sort of occasion going on, but I would love to know from you that where did this start? Since you have done all sorts of scholarly research and work about where this happened, can you share where this is starting?
Let me try and answer that question. My youngest graduated in 2023. Oh yeah, sorry, Umesh Shalat. I'm a resident of Lexington. I'm also a town meeting member, Precinct 7. I can answer a little bit of what you're saying. My youngest graduated in 2023. I spoke to him about this. We share the same ideology. I'd be the first one into that classroom if my child was even remotely taught anything like this. We wouldn't be having this pleasant conversation. So in any event, graduated 2023, it was not taught at that time. My older son graduated 2021, also, nothing like this was taught. Just a few days ago at Mahashivaratri, I spoke with a grade 11 student, and I said, have you heard anything like this? He said, yeah, when I was over there, essentially they taught that Buddhism fixed all the problems of Hinduism. So this is an 11th grader. So he learned this 2 years prior. So now you get some idea of the time frame we're talking about. This is 2020, 2021 approximately time frame. We can narrow it down. The school system is aware of this. I spoke in front of the school committee on December 2nd at Boston, and I made it clear to them. They are aware of this. Human Rights Committee is aware of this. Now, I respectfully have to disagree with Mr. Basu. We don't have time for a long game. A generation is a single year in the life of a school student. Every year is one generation. We don't have 5 years. 5 years is too long. The problem here is that you have a person of moral authority standing in front of that classroom teaching these 14-year-olds this curriculum. And to be perfectly honest, our kids are well aware of what's right and what's wrong. So they're going to walk away and say, yeah, the teacher really doesn't know what they're talking about. It's not the Indian students. It's the other students. It's the American students who now see a person of moral authority claiming that Hinduism is a diminished religion and people who practice Hinduism is a diminished religion. This is not something that can be addressed at a progressive, gradual level. We just don't have the time.
I think, thank you so much for that. I'm wholly in agreement with what you're saying, that this needs action now. But I do understand what Thakarji said, that in terms of long-term issue, if you're going to change it at the Pearson level, publisher level, collect this thing, change the dialogue, change the source of information, it is a long game. But that's not what we need to do. We need, if this has happened within the last 2 years, then you can quickly go to the source and say, this teacher is teaching this to our students and we object. And that's something you can do very quickly. I do 100% agree with this, that you need to go straight into this thing and do it now. We can certainly follow the long game, certainly correct those texts if that is where things are coming from. But we can also correct the people who are actually teaching this, and we should do it now.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. Can't say anything about the timeline, but in terms of long wait, long game, short, it's not like that. There are always short-term goals, long-term goals, and yes, it's your child who's in school this year, and you need to do this year. So that short-term goal is absolutely critical, and you do that. Now, what happens is that child graduates, your other child, whoever has multiple, they all graduate and go. But if you don't have the long-term view, then once the short-term goals are accomplished, the movement dies. So in terms of the long-term goals, for the movement to stay alive, it has to be present in all aspects, in publishing, in teachers' classrooms, in school committees, anywhere and everywhere where there is an opportunity. Because once you leave a vacuum, what happens in a vacuum is someone else will fill it, and they'll fill it with misconceptions. So the idea is to not leave a vacuum, and to do that, it just keeps going on and on. So yes, on the way, you have to achieve your personal short-term goals for your own kid, but at the same time, there are other kids going to follow, and the same material will be taught, and that parent may not be so outspoken as you. I'm saying you, meaning I'm not addressing you personally. I'm saying one of us. That if a parent is not so vocal and outspoken, the child might say, it was a good day at school, and parents are, okay, great, and then the next day comes and it'll go on. So there's a possibility of a movement dying. So yes, you don't want to take the eye off the ball in the short term. You absolutely have, and once you succeed with that teacher modifying their teaching, they'll teach that to others even without you being there, because now they've corrected their situation. But what happens is that without the movement, that loosens, and they fall victim to the materials that they are given, and if that material isn't the publisher materials that they're given, because they're under pressure. Teachers don't have time. They will take the material that they have, and they are under pressure to every Monday morning submit their lesson plans to the principal, and principal has to check every single teacher's lesson plan for every single day, and it all goes very fast. But these are experts, and they can look at, we are experts in our field, and we can sometimes just look at something and in 30 seconds know if it's good or bad, or if it needs some input. So things go very fast, and what happens sometimes is that teacher, even though they've corrected something in their 6th grade classroom, but in their 7th grade they're using a different textbook, they'll go along with the material that's there, not because they want to teach something wrong, it's just they don't have time to make adjustments for every situation and every year. So these are dual movements going on parallel.
So just as a quick follow-up, I mean, how many parents here with kids in high school going to college very soon? Okay, get ready for this stuff. This is a long game, okay? Because there are folks like Audrey Trushke, who's teaching history of the Bhagavad Gita as propagating non-violence. Little children here, remember this. There are people with PhDs who think just because they have a PhD, they can tear apart a very, very ancient scripture without any context, and then call the Bhagavad Gita as a document that propagates nonviolence. She has made public statements that Sita has called Ram a misogynistic pig. Okay? In Colombia, Sheldon Pollock has interpreted Ramayana as us versus them. Us meaning Ram as current day Hindu and Ravan as current day Muslim. This is horrible. If your kids go to these schools, do not pay for these classes. That's a long game. That's why we need scholars to write papers, books like Rajiv Malhotra is doing.
So, Darshanji, also, I think there is a lot of fear among parents that if they go and question the teachers, it might affect their kid's grade, and or recommendation letters, and or following things. I mean, of course, I would say even if you complain about or confront a teacher, or at least tell them, no, I don't think this is true. Some teachers may be accepted. May accept that, yes, I need to change, but some, we don't know what can happen, what goes on in their mind, and they can talk about that kid to all other teachers, and somehow it can percolate into the system, saying that, because it's all subjective in the US, there's no objectivity in terms of how grading is going to work. So can you address that concern from the parents?
Yeah, sure. That's a genuine fear, and as parents, we all fear for the success of our kids in school. So it's a valid, legitimate fear. So first, I at least want to recognize that. Second is, this is why it's important to go to school more often and meet the teachers. they'll explain to you the grade. You all have the Aspen or whatever parent portal, and you can see all the different grades and how much it's weighted and all of that. But when you go and ask the teacher about their grading of a particular assignment, and I would start with highly graded assignments. So if your child comes home with a paper that got an A grade, go to the teacher and ask, why did this paper get an A? So you start to understand what's important to the teacher. And so you can understand their way of analyzing the work that they get. Sometimes, so what happens is that if you only go to complain about a bad grade, they're not going to listen. But if you go in to really understand why that paper got an A, or why your child got an 95 or 85 or whatever so go to talk about the good things first, because that legitimizes what you're doing in the teacher's eyes. So then when you go to talk about a grade that you think is not deserved, and you go and talk to the teacher, they'll be well receptive to that complaint, and they'll, let me look at this again. And they're more likely to be explanatory about that. As far as retaliation, it's a genuine fear, but I don't think that should stop us. It does take courage, and yes, the fear of retaliation is there. But even though I'm superintendent, I am in teachers' classrooms all the time, and I don't often see that. Even though the fear is there, and there might be anecdotes that some people may have faced, but it's legitimate fear. But if you have a relationship with the teacher, that's not going to happen. And the empirical data I have on this is, I'm talking about visiting over the years, maybe 500 different teachers, and many of them that have had situations like this. I haven't found them to be retaliatory. So the fear is legitimate, but the probability of that happening is very, very low. And if that ends up happening, we can take it from there, from that point. But I think we need to have that courage to do and not have that fear. Only because I'm here to tell you that 99.99% of the times it does not happen.
Thank you, Darshanji. I have a quick follow-up on some of the other topics that have been touched upon before I hand over to this gentleman here. Thank you for explaining the hierarchy, federal, state, to Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, then to the school committee, superintendent, and the teachers. I think in that entire hierarchy, one thing that you just mentioned was super helpful, which is the course material, the planning for the week comes in, and it's the principal and the department heads, I'm assuming, it's their responsibility to review what is going to get taught that week. And to your point, they're all highly professional, so obviously it happens very quickly because it needs to happen every week for every course, for every teacher, for every class. But and since they're experienced professionals, at least we hope they all are. To your point about certification and licensing and all of that, it happens quickly. I get that, but something that perplexes me is a sentence. I'll draw your attention to the adjectives that you will see in just this one sentence: foolish, niggardly, stolid, self-conceited, vain, narrow-minded. This is in just one sentence, or maybe like two sentences of the same paragraph. And this is the introduction to Hinduism. This is how Hindus have been described in a course material. Of course, it's a quote. It's not something that the teacher is saying. It's not a teacher statement. But the fact that they chose this quote with all the adjectives to describe a Hindu, how can that just be passed along as either a benign mistake or a genuine mistake or ignorance or lack of training? It doesn't matter what it is. From my standards, as a Hindu that I stand here, it is my identity that is being represented in such a manner to thousands of kids in this town and perhaps in other towns. I just don't understand how that can pass any standards. It's a torture for our kids going to school. It's an emotional, psychological torture that they have to sit through these and feel completely ashamed of their own identity and their own histories. So my question actually, sorry for the long-winded context there, but my question is, how can this even pass? How can this pass, Mr.?
It shouldn't pass. Something like this should be confronted right away. But what happens is that they don't have the authority to just change things, and that's where the problem happens. We know that what they're saying is wrong. They're quoting something from some text, and this is where that long-term approach comes in, that we need to get all the texts corrected in the first place so that they don't end up choosing something like this. But in that case, you have to talk to the teacher, yes, you have to talk to the principal, you have to go to the school committee meeting, you have to go to the site council, and all the avenues that exist, you have to keep raising this. The professional development committee, the curriculum director, you have to raise it with every single individual that's responsible for this. Even though it's a quote, I mean, teachers also, they're professionals and they should have the sense to recognize when something they're reading is inflammatory or derogatory or in some cases plainly wrong. But yes, you definitely have to approach and it's only if you have a relationship built that you will get through, because ultimately the law says teachers have the autonomy. So if they're pushed to the wall and a teacher says, under the law I'm right, what are you going to do? Yes, you can make all the noise you want, you can be that person, all of that is fine. People will see it, community will see it, it might be on social media, it might be anywhere and everywhere. The point is, if you want, the ultimate goal is to make the teacher stop doing this, it's only going to happen with relationship. And once you develop relationship, people who follow, they will also get the benefit of that. But no, do not let that go. You still have to approach it.
Thank you.
I disagree with that. I mean, it's incendiary to hear that. In 1934 or whatever else, in Germany, by law, Hitler was right. And people were going to just sit and accept this. You can't do that. You have to stand up for yourself. I left India when I was 8 years old. In school, people used to ask, do you go to school on an elephant? Right? Do you have cars in India? I said, no, we're a 2-elephant family. Right? What the hell? People are ignorant. But you have to stand up. My 4.5-year-old, this was in England, not here, but my 4.5-year-old, just before first grade, his teacher looked at his name is Aniruddha. She can I call you Andrew? And this child, 4.5, he said to her, this is we were told after, the teacher told us this. He said, can you say after me, repeat after me, Ani Rudd. Is that very difficult? Let me repeat it for you. A 4.5-year-old child, she apologized to us and said, I will never make this mistake again. Okay? This child taught me. They just don't know. But unless you stand up and unless you do things, it's not going to happen. Oh, Hitler by law was right. So the Jews must have done something wrong. You can't accept that. You just cannot.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, and if you heard me, I did say that this is not something you have to let go. You have to approach this. When I say about the law is that that's where the relationship and the long-term, and trust me, I've practiced law. I've been in court. And so just because you scream loudly doesn't mean you're going to get the result you want. Yes, it'll look good for the moment, but who are you doing this for? Are you doing this for yourself? You're doing this for the community, and you want to do it forever. Like, if you want to solve problems for good, and yes, of course, nobody here is naive enough to say that all law is good law. But in order to change something, there are two ways, right? One is from inside, one is from outside. So almost all of us here, well, I'm on the inside, but But even then, I don't have the authority to just say, because there's, in unionized schools, there's collective bargaining agreements. And I'm saying, not saying this is all correct. I'm saying that all of this will require a fight. And you have to be willing to fight, but at the same time, because you stand up and say, this is how it should be, and it has to be, and I will not accept anything, great if it happens. If it doesn't happen, what's your next step?
When he said 2023, this was not taught. 2025, it's being taught. There's a problem right there where you can go to the source. Say, what changed in the law that made you look at Hinduism differently in these last 2 years?
We don't, yeah, I mean, we don't know if this has been in the last couple of years. I mean, we can all sit here and talk about timelines, but you don't know what happened in the 2000s, 2010s. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and dispute this, but
so, Shailesh Chandra, Lexington resident. Kids went through Lexington High Schools in 2016 and 2020. Certainly wasn't an issue then, right? So, so just making the comment, and I got a question actually for you. So, really sorry to hear about your daughter and Valen. So that should not be happening. But at least in one of the things that we have found, we moved to Lexington about 30 years ago, before the kids were born. We've been in Lexington for 30 years. Engagement in the town is important. Lexington, we have an Indian on the school committee. You have 3 town meeting members sitting here actually. I have been a room parent. My wife was the first non-white PTO president of the Lexington High Schools. She has been on the art committee, the library committee, and everything. So, we all both had full-time jobs, as is Shashank and his wife, as is Umesh and this thing, as is Archand. These are the people I know right here. But we've been involved in the town. I think the first step is being involved. So you can actually go in and think, done the site council thing, by the way? Agree with you, site council is very important, so been on site council. So being engaged, I think, is number one. The question I really have for you is, given the current political environment in Washington, D.C., right? You're talking about all these different steps that one can take. Some of the departments are going to get gutted, right? Some of the funding that comes, et cetera, is going to get gutted. Is there an alternative that we have to think about, given what's happening today in D.C. and the Department of Education in particular?
yeah, I mean, what's happening is unprecedented. And as far as us keeping the fire going, we have to keep it on all cylinders everywhere. So yes, some funding might get cut. Who knows where this is going to go, and in a few years, who knows if it'll be arranged. We don't know what's happening. But from what you're saying, the engagement part is absolutely right, that we have to be engaged. And we have to make relationships with people. That is the best and long, say, enduring way of achieving results.
Thank you. Thank you, I agree. So the question on the not questioning the teachers, etc. So took it up with the head of the mathematics department, didn't like his answer, took it to the superintendent, right? So I've done that personally with my kids in high school in 11th grade, argued with the head of the math department, and then took it to the superintendent and got things changed. Did not impact where their careers went.
I'm Christina. Thank you for inviting me here. It's been really wonderful to hear. And I wanted to go back to that excerpt, which was, I don't remember the name of the Muslim scholar from the 11th century, Al-Biruni. And I thought it was interesting as a choice that it's not only an excerpt, but it's a translated excerpt. So I wondered, are there different translations that could have been chosen? Not that any of them would have turned out nicely. As we followed up as a Human Rights Committee with the Director of Equity and Student Support, they explained to us that this was an excerpt in that particular class when they spoke to the teacher was supposed to be about how hate was a part of, what hate looked like in other parts of the world in different points in the history. And I don't know if, I'm just curious what the conversation was, because I know this came up, what was the conversation between the parents and the school district? And also, I would love to learn if there's some opportunities for collaboration, because these are really, as we are recognizing we live in a global world, we can't know everything. So having this room of resources and wisdom to be able to help inform the curriculum would be great, and I would love to. So anyway, I'm not sure what my question is in that, but I just thought that was what I understood, and I'm curious what you thought.
Thank you for that.
Oh, one more thing, sorry. As a side note, anyone can attend a site council meeting. Those are public meetings. Whether, if you run and you don't get elected, you still can go and still, offer your comments.
Thank you, Christina. Sorry, I did Darshan, do you have anything to say about this? Or?
No, I'm just, thank you, I appreciate that. I mean, the comment the comment before that was that the problem was dealt with and fixed. So then why is it happening again? It's obviously a different group of people. So this goes back to what I was originally saying, that in order for something to be quote unquote fixed, you have to keep going, and long-term relationships have to be formed, because yes, one or two things like what you did, very courageous to do that, and you got it fixed, but that was 2 years ago, and now this is happening again. Why? If it got fixed at that point, it should never happen again, but it is. So that's the whole point of, yes, you have to keep that going, but at the same time, you can't lose sight of the long term.
I just wanted to add something to your comment about Al-Biruni. So he's a really important figure in medieval Islamic and Middle Eastern history. But the thing is that the quote that they used in the curriculum, there are many things that he said also about the violence that Ghazni initiated because of his raids. And he said a lot about temple desecration. He talked a lot about the knowledge that the Brahmins gave him, because he was a polymath and he was very well versed in Sanskrit and Arabic and Persian. He also translated a lot of books from the yogas and the sutras. And there's a lot that could have been included in the curriculum, which would have shown both sides. The fact that the selection is very biased, or that the selection looks premeditated, is because certain parts, I think that selection also shows him in a poor light, not just the Hindus. So I think we also have an argument that this type of selection is not merely showing Hindus in a poor light, but it also does disservice to Al-Biruni's scholarship himself, because he's very good. I mean, he was a very learned man, and he praised the Sanskrit Brahmins from whom he learned, and all of the transfer of knowledge that happened between India and the Ghazni court. There's a lot there that was missing. So I just wanted to point out that there is something going on with the pre-selection of material that is unpleasant, and we don't know how to, where to start that conversation. And a comment I had about your suggestion about starting with relationship with teachers is that when you speak about them having licenses, I've gone and looked at the licensure requirement in Massachusetts, and a lot of these teachers, when they get their social studies licenses, the coursework that they complete do not have a South Asia component at all. So even if you have a great relationship, or you develop a relationship with the teacher, at what point or to what level will you have to teach them on South Asian history, and how difficult it would be for a parent to do that, or even to suggest course material and to suggest revisions to whatever it is that they have, because it's for somebody who has no knowledge, like there are people, you can get the social science license requirement fulfilled even if you're like a, even if you have no background in Middle Eastern history or Central Asian history or South Asian history. You could also be somebody who specializes in modern period, and you could still get that license. But then when you sit in a South Asian studies class and you teach this curriculum, which is very complicated, especially for medieval India, and there are multiple conversations going on there which are related to, let's say, the Judaism versus Islam conflict or the Hindus versus Islam conflict, that you need a depth of knowledge in this particular subject area. How are we going to know if these teachers have the depth that is required to teach this particular region in its history?
Thank you. So a lot of the material that's published, a lot of the scholarly writing or textbooks or whatever we have, evidence or good writing, what we want to call, it all is at a much higher level. A lot of it is at college level. Some is at 11th, 12th grade level. But to bring it down to middle school and elementary school, you need to simplify it. And that's where a lot of teachers don't have the training or the skills to do. How do you take a complicated concept and simplify it to 20 minutes in one period that you're dedicating for that topic? Out of the 97 things you have to teach in the year, that topic is given 1 or 2 periods in which you have to teach, test, everything. So think about 20, 25 minutes is what the teacher has to address some topic of that nature. That necessarily requires a very simplified version of something. Now what that should be, it doesn't exist for almost anything. How do you take a college level course or a degree and simplify it into a few weeks of material? That's where the problem lies, and that's where the professional development materials that get created, that's where you need to approach that we realize that the teachers don't have the training, and here's the material that's simplified but accurate, and get that into the curriculum. But because the problem is about simplification.
But the thing is that when you present them the curriculum, the teacher still have to make it, make the curriculum, get the class to engage with the curriculum, and it requires a little bit of familiarity with sort of the discourse, the debates, the conversations around that subject, and if they don't have the historical background or depth of, I just feel that I'm trying to connect this to the hiring situation, where you definitely need people. I mean, especially in communities where you have a high percentage of, let's say, Hindu Americans, you should make a point, or can the community demand that somebody of this ethnicity or heritage be part of the social science?
Certainly, you can certainly ask for that, and that's what this whole Lexington school system at least has diversity, equity, inclusion page on their website and listed people who are responsible for things like that. And this right now, the entire country is facing this situation where they want to hire teachers of the community to teach about the community. It's just that not many people go to school. Like, how many of your kids are pursuing the teaching field? Anyone? Raise a hand.
But, I mean, I have taught at Berkeley, I've taught at the South Asian Studies Department, I have a PhD in South Asian Studies. And so I'm sitting here and I'm trying to think that how should I contribute to this conversation? Should I make a report? Should I submit the report and present it to IAL and the Hindu Network?
Again,
directly? I don't know how to go about this.
So
but I'm equipped to do this work.
Yeah. So yes, two things, right? One is the immediate answer. Immediate answer is, if you have this knowledge base, then prepare a simplified version that you can teach an 11-year-old. 11-year-old is not going to comprehend the knowledge or the skills that you will impart at that level. So if I make a suggestion to you how to approach this, one, take the concept that you want the students to understand and have the teacher trained to teach. Simplify it but keep it accurate. And that's a skill that is very rare. How do you keep something that's accurate but still bring it down to an 11th grade, 11-year-old, 10-year-old level? And it's not going to be achieved the first time. So let's say you prepare something like, give it to the teacher. The teacher will try it and reflect on it. Oh, it didn't go as I planned. So now I'm going to make this change. Next time I'll teach it this way. Then they teach it that way. It's going to get continually refined. So it's not going to be as simple as don't do that, do this. It'll never happen. Yes, you'll get noticed. The noise will be heard. But will the result be achieved? Probably not, and even if it is, it's going to be temporarily until you are active. Once your kids are gone and you're not active anymore, it'll revert back. So simplified, accurate versions, and then working with them. It might take a whole year, it might take 2 years working with them until they get it right. But you can't say do this, otherwise, there's no hope. Like, there's always hope, and for a long-lasting solution if you want. So 2 things, that's what I would suggest. 1, prepare simplified material and connect with them and give it to them. And 2, collaborate with them over the year, offering your help and discussing with them. What are your reflections when you talked? When you said this, what was the kid's reaction? What are the questions you asked? Say, oh, that question, yeah, you know what, maybe you want to phrase it this way instead. And that will elicit the thought in their mind to respond in this way. And the teacher will go and try that. And then you look at the test questions. No, you know what, these 3 questions are not appropriate. So it's going to take work from you to work with them, but you do that for a year and you will achieve the result.
Just one very quick question. Since you mentioned earlier, and thank you for the putting the context about how from top to bottom, really. As the Department of Education under the current administration is obviously changing, do you see more of this responsibility of curriculum development, curriculum, etc., coming down, percolating down to the teachers, to school administrators, or is it going to remain the same? Even if federal government remains changes significantly. And the second question, which is more about what parents can do. So I have been in a unionized environment where faculty have academic freedom. You mentioned that in school systems as well. And in that context, it's hard because teachers don't have a lot of time. They usually use some kind of course cartridge. They will give that to students. They will give some assigned readings and then have a discussion in classroom. So how do parents get access to that textbook material or whatever lesson plans that may be coming in that present academic year in advance? So that is more like a real question that I have, because I never figured out that when my child was in college, when she was in high school.
Yeah, so the second question first. A lot of lesson plans in a lot of districts are published on the website. So that much you can get. It's hard to get the actual resources, like what is the handout that, unless you have a child in that class, it's hard to get that material. So in terms of the lesson plan, if it's not on the website, well, Lexington has a lot of lesson plans online. Other districts, I'm not sure, but since I was coming here, I had looked that up.
Most teachers will put everything on the website.
And a lot of the teachers even have their own websites where they'll put up everything. So the only thing you might be missing is very nitty-gritty things like, here, read this for the next 10 minutes and discuss with your partner what's the point here. Like those micro things, you might not get access to it unless you have a child in the class. But you can see the macro level planning on the website. And even if it's not on the school's website or the teacher's own website, like you said, you can still go there and they'll share it with you. that's something that they will share. The first question about the U.S. Department of Education, mostly what they do is money. They give money. U.S. Department of Education has nothing to do with the curriculum. So whether the teacher's responsibility will increase or school, local, regional responsibilities will increase, I don't see that happening in the curriculum manner. What may happen is that the funds that are given for special education and English language learners, those might decrease drastically. So in that sense, I can see that, yes, now the teachers will have to come up with things on their own because there is not money coming in to purchase these curriculums. So in that sense, there might be some impact, but I think largely the impact is going to be money. And if state, at least in Massachusetts, if we look at the practice, when the U.S. Department of Agriculture took away money for lunch, state came up with the money. And so many schools now have free breakfast and lunch fully paid by the state, which was just a couple years ago paid by the federal government. So if something like that were to happen in curriculum, I think the state government will step up. And so the impact, if it is, will be negligible.
At least in Lexington, we have other resources, guys. How many of you have heard of the Lexington Education Foundation? You can sponsor things in the area.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Thakkar, for that talk and for walking us through that overview. My name is Abhijit. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So my name is Abhijit. We have been residing in Lexington more than a couple of years ago, moved here more than a couple of years ago, primarily for education of our child. A few months ago, she came across the Ganesha idol that was shown, and as a fifth grader, I think it was in one of her friends' curricula. And she brought it up to her teacher and said, "This is disturbing to me, and this is a god we worship. I'm a dancer and training in dance, and there are pieces we dedicate to this god." And so the matter promptly got escalated. Went to the assistant principal. He roped in the director of equity. They got on a call with us. Interestingly, the assistant principal himself was gifted a Ganesha idol and had some context of the importance probably that we hold in our civilization to Ganesha. So anyway, so this call happened, and then what was brought up was there were 2 or 3 reasons that were given. That when I asked them about the source, they said it came from a blog, and there was no really scholarly reference to that image. Then the other question came up that there are thousands of images available. Why this one? And the response probably was that it was to spark debate. And then they mentioned that this was an Indian problem. So I told them, no, it's not. It's not. My concern is that it's not an Indian problem. It's actually a civilizational issue, and there is some disconnect. It's either ignorance or lack of knowledge, or both. Or I don't really know what the motivation was, but certainly this needed fixing. So they did promise to get back. I haven't heard back, number one. We did go to the school committee. We did discuss that. I think we get 3 minutes to speak, and my wife spoke. And again, not much has happened. Now, my question to you is, what do we do in a circumstance like this, right? How long do we wait? How do we engage, hopefully in a productive path forward? And at what stage would the other options you mentioned, DC and other one, when would that come into the picture? I mean, how does this play out in the system? And if one were to work to reverse one such scenario, would it make working on the other situations easier?
Yeah, sure. The more problems you solve, the easier it gets to solve the next one. In this case, the Ganesha Murti, the image, you can flood the school with those images, right? You can send Murti with your kids to school. You can take it to school committee and show it. You can have narratives. So yeah, but you can rip that page out of the textbook and throw it away, but that's not going to go away. So yes, having narratives around that and speaking out at school committee events. But I think in this case, if you haven't gotten anywhere, even with the superintendent, school committee, all of that, approach, and like the gentleman over there said, LEA, you can engage them, and also try to get on the, or at least whoever is in the feedback committee for the superintendent evaluation committee. If you can't get on that board, discuss this with the person who is on that committee for superintendent evaluation, which generally happens around late spring. So that's another avenue before escalating it further. But I think something like that is a middle level. It's not going to happen immediately, but it's not going to take years. It could happen in weeks or months. But I think that's something that if you haven't tried, engage the LEA, or in any town there's the teachers union, so you can engage with the teachers union and also the superintendent evaluation committee. I think those two approaches will help move this further.
So just as a follow-up on this, when my daughter was a victim of racial discrimination on the sports team, we waited 10 months. We pleaded with the, at the time, acting superintendent, acting assistant superintendent. Then we engaged with the incoming acting superintendent and the incoming assistant superintendent. 10 months went by in this, and I finally said, okay, you've taken pretty much an entire academic year to try to resolve this. You haven't come to any resolution, so this is what you're going to do. 1, I want a written apology from the principal. 2, I want the principal and the sports head in the high school to sit down and apologize to my daughter, who has since left soccer. And 3, I wanted to make sure that the sports department actually went through the DEI training, which the school said they did, but after all of these investigations turned out that they did not, because these trainings happened after school when the sports teachers would be on the fields. So the outcome of that was the timings were adjusted so that they actually sit down and take the training. So sometimes you're just going to have to recommend what the heck they need to do for something to come out.
Yeah, no, that's true. You know, identifying a problem is one thing, but then proposing the solution, I think that will help go a long way. Also, on the websites, in most websites, you'll see a document called Program of Studies, and they usually update it every year and post it on the website. So if you go to your Lexington or whatever other towns' websites and find a document called Program of Studies, and if you're not able to locate it, you can ask the principal or anyone in administration in school. They'll be able to locate and give it to you. That tells you exactly what is going to be covered in which subjects. So the Program of Studies is like a college course catalog, but little more in-depth. So each course is written, it's described, and so at least you get the flavor of what's going on in there. And then you will know that when they're talking about this topic, I need to talk to the teacher. So you kind of get some kind of a timeline. So look at Program of Studies. Look at the curriculum frameworks. And then identify the professional development people and then work with them to actually create materials like we talked about earlier or propose solutions like
So much to talk about and continue the discussion. As Dr. Darshan Thakkar said, we have a short as well as long way to go. So we have to decide our short-term goals and long-term goals. So I do want to thank you. Thank you so much for coming to our community and talking to us, giving your expertise on being inside as a school superintendent, and also creating this wonderful discussion where we try to decode the school curriculum. So I do want to thank you, and as a token of our thanks, I think Shalini, would you like to give flowers to Dr. Thakkar. Please, thank you so much. Thank you. So I do want to say that it was truly an important learning session where we tried to look into what our kids are learning in the school, how our identity, which is Hindu identity, is being taught in schools, and most importantly, what a parent can do to address biases and inaccuracies in school curriculum. Thank you so much. At this point, I would also like to thank Rajeshwari ji for putting together this wonderful event where we learn about the organizations that are doing so much for our community, which is, they are part of our community, which is CoHNA, HPN, and CYAN. Thank you for introducing us to Hindu organizations, as well as putting together the presentation, which put things in perspective. So that was thank you. Yogesh ji, of course, you are the one who brought Dr. Thakkar, and thank you for connecting him to the community. And of course, Shashi ji for moderating the question answers.
And you, Bindu ji.
But this event would not happen without the kids, some of I see, and the parents, because and the community members, right? Me, as well as Umesh and Mr. Nene, our kids are done, they're in college and they're done, but we are here because just like the students, just like their parents, and us as a community member, we care. So those who are here are the ones who are here, they are caring and they are concerned about what our students are learning in the school. So for that, I know, I'm very sure that you had so many places to go to, parties to attend to, but you are here. Why are you here? Because you care. Because you're concerned. So I want to thank you for being here and in attending this event, which is most important for our youth. So thank you, and thank you all. I do want to say that formally we do announce that the event is over, but do continue to be here, talk, because as I said, we have a lot to talk about. So feel free to chat with Darshan ji and others, and we can continue that way, informally.
Thank you for coming.
Bye-bye.